I really don't know if this is a good idea or not. I am either going to have the best time of my life or I am going to traumatize myself reading haunted house books. Stick around, find out what happens. I'm Mallory Gary, this is the Book Nook. Whether you are a longtime viewer or you have found my channel for the first time, I'm so glad you're here. I am a writer and a reader. I love to share my passion for fiction. Today, that is haunted house books. I'm going to try and keep this video as spoiler-free as possible. There may be times when I need to talk a little bit more in depth about the book, or times where I may need to give a little bit more information so that I can provide a good recommendation. If I do feel like I'm going to spoil something, I will give you a heads up. No ending spoilers, but there may be like in-between spoilers. So let's get to the stack of haunted house books that I will be reading throughout the month of October. Reading as many as I can until I get scared. I am wearing my reading skeleton book again. Say hi, little buddy. And I have a stack of what I hope will be very scary books to choose from all of this month. The first one I want to talk about is The Secret of Poppyridge Cove. This, I think, looks like a cozier haunted house mystery, and I'm hoping it will kind of have Scooby-Doo-ish vibes. Next up, I checked out 2 books from the library. This Cursed House by Sandeen was on a video that I posted last month about all the new mystery thriller releases in the fall that I was looking forward to reading, and it happened to come in just in time for this reading vlog. Look at this cover. This is gonna scare me, right? A couple of these I already had on my shelf and were part of my fall TBR video that I did where I had a stack of spooky type books that I was looking forward to reading. One of them is Just Like Home by Gailey. I don't know if the house is haunted or not, but this cover makes it seem like it. We Ate the Dark is a book that I picked up at a newer bookstore in Portland that focuses on centering queer fiction and queer books. And I think there is a house involved. There's a house on the cover. Listen, if you put a house on the cover and the house is not involved in the story itself, what are you even doing with your life? Then I picked up 3 books just for this vlog. So I better read these because I don't know when else I'm planning on reading them, if not right now. The first is Starling House by Alix E. Harrow. We have the book The September House by Carissa Orlando. That cover is so spooky house, haunted house vibes. If I have ever seen one, I'm scared just looking at it. I might have to read this one with the lights on. But the point is to scare myself, so let's turn the lights off. The final book that I have picked out for this vlog that I hope I will be able to read before the end is one by Kingfisher, A House with Good Bones. There's not a house on the cover. I mean, there's a house right there. The word house is on the cover, but this is a vulture. So, the house is either too scary to put on the cover, or maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the house. Here is how I'm going to be rating the books that I'm reading this month, not by stars, not by how much I like the book or don't like the book, but by how much it scares me. And so I'm going to use the ghost rating system. 1 ghost, the house is certainly haunted, but these ghosts are pretty friendly. They're Casper ghosts, they're Scooby-Doo type monsters. There's a coziness to the whole thing. We kind of maybe want to go there and live there for a little while. We're not going to be afraid of doors slamming or window sashes flinging about because we know these ghosts don't really mean us any harm. A 2 ghost book has some bumps in the night, some scary shadows lurking. But again, I'm not too worried about it. I am not looking around my house thinking that these ghosts are going to be interrupting me and my day-to-day life. There is probably some element that makes it a little bit more fantastical than the everyday, and so for that reason I probably won't be too scared of a 2 ghost book. A 3 ghost book will have me turning on more lights, maybe checking to make sure the doors are locked. There's going to be some high tension in these books. The ghosts are getting a little scarier, the house is getting a little bit more haunted. I'm starting to look around my own house. There's bumps and pops and cracks as the house settles. I'm starting to think, is that a ghost? Then we get to the 4 ghost books, which are, I need to read this with the lights on. Maybe somebody can be in the room with me while I read this book. I'm starting to look a little closer at the shadows, to jump a little bit if I hear a noise. Maybe I'm even jumping when I read what is happening in the scene. The Four Ghost book is definitely scary to me. It is a book that is going to keep me up a little later than I may want. The Four Ghost book is going to have some more jump scares and probably play on my own personal phobias a little bit more. The house that we're seeing in a Four Ghost book is going to be a lot more malevolent, malicious, and dangerous. And then we get to the Five Ghost book, and boy, that is when all ghosts hit the fan. I am going to be having all the lights up. Actually, you know what? I'm going to be reading this book in the daytime. There will be no nighttime reading of a Five Ghost book. A Five Ghost book is my worst fears coming true, and you better believe that after I am done reading it, I am going to be checking in the closets, checking under the bed, checking all those dark little shadows that are in my basement. Actually, I'm not even going to go to the basement after I read a Five Ghost book. That's the rating system that I have set up for this video, so let's start digging into the books. The Secret at Poppyridge Cove is not a haunted house book. I read about 50 pages on this one and then absolutely bailed on it. I don't know if it would have gotten more into the haunted house part of it if I had kept going, but I just was not connecting with this book. It was a very weirdly paced. There were a lot of strange things that happened, not like strange haunted things, but I mean strange plot and character development things. The main character and her friends are going on a hike in the redwood forest, and they come across this house that is on like an ocean cliff, and it looks like it's abandoned, and there are dead animals on the porch, like blood and gore. And at that point, I was a little confused because I was like, I thought this was going to be a cozy mystery because of the cover and kind of the vibes of the blurb and the book description. But usually with cozy mysteries, you do not describe that level of gore, especially with animals. And it wasn't scary to me, but it was just kind of gruesome. And then we jump into this very weird section where our main character is kind of fighting with her boyfriend about this house. She's like, I'm drawn to this house. And I'm like, why are you drawn to this house where all these animals are laying dead? And her boyfriend is also asking this very legitimate question. And this woman is just like, oh, I just am. It just looks like the perfect house. Cut to, she gets a very weird letter in the mail from an aunt she didn't know existed. The aunt is dead, but guess what? She has a bunch of money that she wants to give to her niece. I did not make it to the part where the woman buys the house with the money that she conveniently got from her dead aunt who she didn't know existed. There was really some clunky dialogue. The editing of the book, like the actual copy editing part of it, was not super great. There were some characters' names that were switched around in a way that drew me out of the story, was very confusing, and made me think that maybe a little bit more attention to detail should have taken place before this book was published. I am not giving this one any ghosts because I didn't finish it. When I went back and read some reviews, I saw that other people were also struggling a little bit with the unevenness of the book, how they were picking it up thinking it was going to be a mystery about a haunted house, and it turned out it was more a romance or like a women's fiction and more of the growth of the characters, which is not bad. It's just not what I want for my reading month. It's not what I'm looking for right now. I really want haunted house vibes, whether that is very, very scary or very, very cozy, slightly spooky, Scooby-Doo. I was hoping for Scooby-Doo and I did not get that. I got What the Who? I'm going to pick up Starling House by Alix Harrow next and give that one a try because the cover is immaculate. These birds, very mysterious looking, and it has purple pages, purple edges. This book is calling to me in the same way that the house calls to our main character. So let's find out together if this is the haunted house book that will have me absolutely shaking in my socks. This lighting makes my eyes look absolutely shredded. They look like this because I'm not getting enough sleep because I'm reading Starling House by Alix Harrow and it is harrowing. I am only about 50 pages in, but I've already been scared more than once or twice with this book. She's doing such an excellent job of layering in the tension, of revealing just enough to make me wholly freaked out, by what this house is hiding. Our main character is Opal, and she is an orphan. She is a young woman who is taking care of her brother, who is hoping to build a better life for her brother, but she's a dropout from high school. She doesn't have a very good job. She works at the tractor supply store. She has set aside her own dreams to take care of her brother, and she's obsessed with this house, with the Starling House, which is this house in her small town of Eden, Kentucky, that is locked behind a gate. And for generations, people have lived here, and there have been very scary stories told about these people, murders that have happened, strange deaths that have happened, and she just cannot stop thinking about this house. Then one day she walks by the Starling House, and one of the creepiest scenes in the book so far happens. So the current warden of the Starling House basically offers her a job, and his motives are absolutely questionable. I could foresee a situation where the supernatural elements that are just being hinted at become a little too real world, and thus become a little less scary, which sometimes happens to me when I'm reading supernatural fiction, when I'm reading paranormal fiction. Depending on how the author is choosing to reveal the spooky elements, it can either be very terrifying or I just have a really good time reading it. And so right now, because I don't really know what's going on with this house, it's terrifying me. It's dark outside and it's only 7:30, so I picked the perfect season to read haunted house books. I'm not too much farther into the Starling House. I read about another 50 pages last night, and while things are still very mysterious, they have gotten a little less spooky. There's still a lot happening in this book, a lot of tense things. The stakes have definitely escalated for our main character, but some of the really spooky elements with the house have kind of settled down. I have groceries to unpack, and then I want to make some pumpkin bread. It's like 8 o'clock right now. I need to get the bread in the oven, or else I'm going to be up pretty late. I'm going to try listening to the audiobook version of Starling House for a little while and see how that goes. This book has footnotes, which has actually been pretty fun. There are not that many. They only come around a little bit every once in a while. And normally I don't like footnotes in books. Normally I find that to be very pretentious, but it's really working in the Starling House because the footnotes are some other person fact-checking our narrator's version of events, and I'm finding that to be absolutely fascinating. I just realized that I am listening to chapter 13 tonight. Very spooky. I just finished reading Starling House by Alix E. Harrow. And though this book started out scary, it definitely lost the thrills, lost the chills for me. By the end, I was just kind of feeling a ho-hum about this book. I'm going to give it 3 ghosts because the beginning section, when we don't really know what's going on with Starling House, when we don't really know what the hidden secrets are, that part is pretty intense. For me, not knowing what was going on with the house was exactly the kind of spooky read that I was looking for, exactly the kind of haunted house vibes I was looking for. As the story moves along, as the plot develops, and we get to know more about the house and more about our main character, Opal, and the warden of the Starling House, whose name I believe is Arthur, they become a little bit less scary. The tension in this book stays tight throughout, but the scary factor really takes a nosedive about halfway through, and my theory about why that is, too much kissing. I am really trying to keep this blog as spoiler-free as possible, but for those of you who are looking for a haunted house scary book, this one may not be the one for you. There is a prominent romance subplot with the Starling House between our 2 main characters, and halfway through the book, the focus shifts away from the mystery of the house and the mystery of this small town, and more to the romance of our main characters and their budding relationship and the trauma that they're going through together, the trauma bonding that they are experiencing. And it becomes, yes, a story of Opal finding herself and finding her strength and chasing her dreams and becoming the person she wants to be, but also about Opal finding love and finding the person in this world who will be her person. I do like reading romance. I don't think I was expecting this to be a romance. I think that changed how I read the book and how I enjoyed the book. There are a lot of scary things that are going on with these two characters, a lot of kind of violent, mysterious, intense things that are happening, and for half of the book they're just like, oh, but I want to kiss him. Oh, I want to kiss her. Oh, is she the person? I don't know. There are times when they are badly beaten by the enemy in this book, like physically beaten, bleeding, possibly broken ribs, and they're like, let's have a hot makeout session. And I don't buy it. I don't like books like that. If that is your jam, this book will be your jam. But for me, I was looking for a more realistic, can I say realistic, version of a haunted house. The house does play a prominent role. It does shift and change as the book proceeds, and I really, really loved the house in this book. I loved the meta fictional style of it, the way it's a story within a story within a story within a story, how deep it goes down. I loved the setting, the house itself. There were a lot of really, really good elements. This book was so close to being like a really favorite read for me. One final thought before I move on to my next haunted house book. Our main character, Opal, does so much puking in this book, and to the point that it's drawing me out of the story, to the point that it's obnoxious. I'm not saying there can't be puke in stories, I'm just saying it wasn't like ectoplasm, it wasn't like poltergeist puke like coming out of your chest. It was just, I'm scared, I'm nervous, blah. I know I just went on a little bit of a rant there, and you might think that that means I hated this book, but I didn't. I had a really great time with a lot of this book. The writing is lush and lovely, a little bit purple prose at time, but I kind of loved it. The house was one of my absolute favorite characters, perhaps of all times. I did enjoy this one. It was not the haunted house book that I was looking for this vlog, however. I could have done with a lot less kissing and a lot more ghosts. So I'm gonna move on to my next one. I need to pick out another one to start reading. Do I want to pick one that I think will be really haunted and really spooky? Or do I want to pick one that I think will be a little more literary and maybe not as focused on the house? I think right now I am torn between two. This Cursed House by Sandeen, and then Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. So I'm a little torn between both of these. Tonight I might sit down and try the first chapter of each and see which one is calling to me most. I read the first chapters of both these books, This Cursed House and Just Like Home. That didn't really get me any closer to deciding which one to read next. Both of the first chapters were very good. They hooked me right away with these books. As I thought, Sarah Gailey's writing absolutely pulls me in the first chapter. This Cursed House was also really interesting because there was a ghost in the first chapter, and I am looking for scary books, ghostly hauntings. But the first chapter of Just Like Home was describing this very eerie house that the main character was returning to. I don't know if this is going to be like haunted scary or buried secrets, serial killer things you don't tell your children kind of scary. I hope that I can get to both of these in this reading vlog, but for this moment, I did decide to start with This Cursed House by Sandeen. I did decide to commit to this one, mostly because there was a ghost in the first chapter, and that's the kind of vibe that I am looking for. This Cursed House starts out with our main character, Gemma, on a train. She is making her way from Chicago to New Orleans. Her life in Chicago has absolutely fallen to pieces, and she has received an offer she can't refuse from a rich family in New Orleans who live on a plantation, and they say, hey, come stay with us. She says yes to this family without really thinking about the consequences because they're offering her a lot of money. And this family, when we first meet them, the vibes are way off. The house itself has not been very creepy yet, but there are some paranormal elements, some ghostly elements happening, and then we find out that Gemma is there for a very specific reason that is quite unexpected. I am a little over 50 pages into the book, and I am really enjoying this one. I really like the historical element. It is set in the 1960s, and there is segregation happening, there is racial tension, there are some mental health discussions, there is family relations, the differences in society, the way that people are accepted or not accepted, and it is all centered around this idea of this house, this family. There is a curse involved. There are some scary elements happening, some paranormal elements. I really am enjoying the discussion of race and belonging wrapped up in kind of a horror package. I think that works really well, and I think Sandeen's writing is really gripping. It's really captivating me. I'm very drawn into the story, very drawn into the characters, very drawn to the main character, Gemma, and how she is going to process all of this information that she is getting from this family, whether or not she's going to agree to their terms. Currently, I'm not finding this too scary yet. There is just a little hint of scare so far, but I'm hoping that it begins to twist and turn and start to be a book that I will struggle to read in the middle of the night. We'll find out together. I have never met a more dysfunctional family than the Duchon family. I'm on page 220. And this family is absolutely messed up. Yes, they are cursed, but also, like, they're just bad people. Our main character is finding this out as she also uncovers all these deep, dark secrets that this family is hiding on their property, in the house that they're trapped in. I'm really enjoying this book. I don't know if it's scary or not. I have been listening to the audiobook for a lot of the chapters in this book, and I don't find the audiobook to be very scary. And the audiobook narrator is doing a great job of telling the story, but there's no real threat in her voice, no real tension in the scenes where there are ghosts or the scenes that I think would be scary if I was reading them. I wasn't really expecting that, to be honest. Like, I thought that if the story was scary, I would be scared regardless of whether I'm reading it or listening to it. But that's proving to not be true. I know I have the most amazing hair right now. Normally I have beautiful curls in, but I just am going full troll mode at my house. It is Thursday and I am tired. It's been a long week. Work has been long. I've had just a lot to do, but I have really been enjoying this cursed house. It has actually been keeping me quite good company. If the absolute worst people on the face of the earth can be called good company. I'm actually really excited to see how the rest of this book unfolds, to see if we learn anything else about the Duchon family and why they are the way they are and how they became kind of these reprehensible people just doing the most awful things to protect their family bloodline, their lightness, their pale color. They're a very confusing family in terms of what they believe and in their ethics and in how they feel about race and their place in society, and I am just finding the whole conversation just very interesting. There have been a couple places where I am wanting the story to move a little faster, where we are kind of lingering in these moments of Gemma trying to decide if she wants to stay in this house and help her family or not, where she kind of goes back and forth on whether or not she should even be here, whether or not she's going to get anything out of this. There are these moments where I'm just kind of like, okay, get to the thing, stop waffling and just do the thing that you're here to do, just push the story forward. But overall, I'm really enjoying this book. Something very scary just happened, but again, I was listening to it on an audiobook and so I wasn't that scared. So I'm going to try reading some of this physical book tonight to see if I can get kind of the thrills that I'm looking for in terms of the haunted house vibes. So far, I would say that yes, this house does have a certain haunting element. There is definitely a history with this house, not necessarily the building, but with the people who live inside it. I finished reading This Cursed House by Sandeen, and I think I am going to go ahead and give this one 3 ghosts. I was thinking originally that I was just going to give it 2 ghosts because while there is plenty of tension, there's a curse, there is a spooky house with a very messed up very toxic family. There wasn't a lot of scary things happening at first. There wasn't a lot of like jump scares. There weren't a lot of things happening that had me as a reader feeling scared for myself. What I'm looking for in this vlog, in particular with the books that I'm reading, are books that scare me. Books that make me look up at the doorway, books that make me look at the window and feel scared that something is going to happen to me. And this book, there was a lot of scary things happening for our main character, but it never really reached out of the page to scare me, except for towards the end, there were a couple of scenes that were pretty intense, and it had to do with the house's deep, dark secrets, the violent past, the things that this family has been covering up. And there was one scene in particular where the main character goes into one of the family members' rooms and finds something there, discovers something there that was very startling to me. And then there were a couple of seances and a couple of ghost-centered activities that happened that did elevate the fear factor a little bit. But the thing that happens in the room, the thing that she finds, I think was disturbing enough for me to bump it up to 3 ghosts. I do kind of wish that more had been explored with the thing that she finds in the room, because it is kind of one of those things that gets a little brushed over. This is Del Sandeen's first novel, and it was very strongly written. I really enjoyed the unfolding of the secrets, the way that we discovered how our main character Gemma is connected to this curse. I do think there were some times where I was a little bit confused by her choices as a character, so maybe there was a little bit more depth of character that could have been explored. Some situations where I was like, what is she still doing here? What is she still doing at this house? Why hasn't she left yet? And I think the author did try to explain it in a way that the reader could latch onto, but there were a few times where I was just like, just leave, just go. Who cares about this family? Just get out while you can. This was a really interesting way to explore racism and colorism and how Black people were existing in the 1960s in 2 different places of America and raised in 2 different types of families. I think this was also a great package to wrap up like intergenerational trauma and how violence can be passed between generations, between family members, between timelines, how you don't necessarily get to say, well, I didn't do the thing, so I'm not responsible, I'm not guilty. She was able to pack a lot into this horror book, into this book that was just a psychologically nerve-wracking, but also an exploration of this woman who is coming to understand herself and her past and her family and who she is and why she is the way she is, and coming to find some sort of redemption. 3 ghosts for this one, for having some very unsettling scenes, but I was able to read it if it was dark, if I was alone, wasn't really too afraid, just had a few scenes where I was biting my nails a little bit. I'm not feeling great, so I've been spending some time in bed reading A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. So far, it's not scary at all. There are some strange things happening, sort of, maybe. The main character used to live in this house in North Carolina with her mom and her grandmother. And she's been away for a while. She works as an entomologist, and she was supposed to be on this archaeological dig where she was going to be researching the insects there. Then that got canceled, so she drove to her mother's house in North Carolina instead. And she's been talking to her brother, and her brother's like, hey, something is going on with our mom. I'm a little worried about her. And when the main character gets there, she does notice that her mom's like a little skinnier than normal, like she's lost weight. She's painted the walls of the house ecru, which T. Kingfisher describes as white and beige, like you couldn't decide, so you combine the two. And her mom's just kind of acting a little bit out of character, but nothing too scary. The scariest thing so far has been that there is a vulture who sits on the mailbox. And there's no cell service here, and the Wi-Fi is really spotty, the internet's really spotty, so I feel like that's setting it up for our main character to be very isolated, so that if things do start going wrong, they're not going to be able to just call for help. I really wanted to read A House with Good Bones last night. I sat down and started reading it. I pulled up a little YouTube aesthetic video, some kind of fall vibes. I had music playing in the background. This was too scary for me to read at night by myself right before I went to bed. I like to think that I'm not a person who gets scared very easily. I am very aware that I am reading fiction or watching movies. I'm very aware that it is a story and there's costuming and music that heightens my feelings. And with books, I'm just very aware that I'm reading. So I don't normally get very scared, but I do like the anticipation. I do like when things kind of spook me a little bit, when I get a little bit nervous. But there is one way you can scare me in a book, and that is by having something happen to someone while they are sleeping. There is a situation that keeps happening in this book where our main character goes to sleep, and then she wakes up and feels something like combing her hair, like a claw combing her hair, and she can't move. Terrifying. Her explanation is that she's experiencing sleep paralysis, and I have experienced sleep paralysis in my life, and it is in fact very terrifying. I do get nightmares sometimes, night terrors, where I wake up screaming, or my husband has to wake me up because I am screaming in my sleep. And so that kind of scene is the kind of scene that I just can't read right before I go to bed. Now reading this book during the daytime with all the lights on, because this has turned into a very frightening book indeed. I do not have that much farther to go. I think I have 50 pages, and this book is very readable. I'm having a hard time putting it down, and it is that slow build of fear, that slow, drawn out build up where there's all these little elements that you're just like, that doesn't seem right. That's a little off. What's going on there? And the main character is like, there's a rational explanation for everything. And as a reader, I'm like, get out. Grab your mom and get out of this house. But of course the main character's like, this is a suburban house. There's no way it can be haunted. Something just happened in the last chapter where I stopped, and things are just absolutely hitting the fan. And I paused to come and chat with you a little bit about the book because I needed a bit of a break from the terrifying things that are happening at this house. Good job, T. Kingfisher, for understanding the assignment and writing a scary haunted house book. I'm gonna go finish this before it gets dark. I think I have a couple of hours left. I think I should be able to get this finished before the sun sets. You know, now that I kind of know what's going on, I don't think there's going to be any more of those scary head scratching in the middle of the night scenes, so I could potentially finish this while it's dark. I might as well just finish it now and then start another scary one as the sun goes down. I finished A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. There is still some light outside. I want to say there's like an hour to 2 hours left of light. So thank goodness, because this book was just creepy and gross, and I loved it. Our main character is an entomologist. She works on archaeological digs. She works for a university. She's supposed to be working on something called The Project, where she identifies specimens online, pictures of insects. So she's very knowledgeable about bugs. She's about to go on an archaeological dig when the dig gets delayed. And so she decides to go to North Carolina to visit her mother. Her mother has lost a lot of weight and seems to be very paranoid, very timid inside the house. Also, turns out there are no bugs in grandmother's garden. No bugs at all. Not a one. Nary a fly. Not even a little ant. No spiders. No ladybugs. Nothing in this garden. And of course our entomologist main character says to herself, there is something very wrong in this garden. There are some things that happen with insects that if you are at all squeamish about insects, maybe don't read this book. But I found it to be an absolutely delightful, scary haunted house book. There were a lot of little unexpected things, a lot of very fun supernatural elements. The other thing I really liked about this book was the light touch of humor that took place throughout the book. You have this tension, all these scary things that are happening, and then you would have the main character say something really funny and kind of release some of that tension and allowed me to get through the book without being completely on edge. I read it in 2 days. I started it yesterday on Saturday and today is Sunday and I finished it. So it was a very compelling read, very hard book to put down. I just think this was exactly what I was looking for when I went into this vlog, when I started this vlog, when I picked up a bunch of haunted house books. This was the kind of thing I was looking for. Now, I'm going to give it 4 ghosts, 4.5. I am teetering on the edge here between 4 and 5. One of the reasons I want to give it 4 ghosts is because of the humor element, where I was able to kind of release tension and not be as scared all the time. The second reason is that there is a significant suspension of disbelief that you have to do with this book in order to buy into the supernatural elements that are happening. The scary things that are happening are very tilted into the fantastical side, and so for that I think I want to give it 4 ghosts. The elements are absolutely terrifying and scary and gross and just really imaginative, but could they really happen to me? Very, very doubtful. Very doubtful. In terms of a haunted house that terrifies me, this one I think is just going to get a 4. I don't think I'm going to give it the full 5 ghosts because there are a lot of things in here that I had to really suspend my disbelief for, and I was able to because that's the kind of book I was looking for. I want that paranormal, I want that supernatural, I want that reach, I want to just be absolutely drawn into some mad haunted mayhem, and I got that with this book. But I was very much aware that I was reading a novel. But unlike some of the earlier books that I read in this vlog, this one did have me wanting to turn on the lights. I did not want to read it alone in my bedroom. I definitely was creeped out by some of the late night haunting things that were happening. 4 ghosts for a house with good bones. I'm moving on to the next one to see if I can find something even more terrifying than this. I found my 5 ghost book. I found the book that absolutely terrified me, Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I am actually surprised that this turned into a 5 ghost book. I have to tell you that I thought going into this it was going to be a little bit more focused on the serial killer aspect of the plotline that they discuss in the blurb. And that is definitely a thread in this book, but it is absolutely a haunted house book, and boy, was I not expecting what I found in this book. I was actually so invested in Just Like Home that I didn't even record any updates for you. I just sat down to start reading it and didn't stop until I finished, and came on here to tell you that I found my 5 ghost book, my most terrifying haunted house book from the stack that I chose for this year. Our main character, Vera, comes home after a long time away. She is there to help her mother die. She is there to pack up her mother's things and get the house ready to sell. She and her mother do not have a good relationship. The reason why is slowly revealed throughout the course of this book. The deeper I got into the story, the more disturbing it became. But at the beginning, it is a slow burn and there are only like kind of minor hauntings that happen, but then as we get to know Vera more, as we get to know more about her past and her relationship with her parents and her relationship with this house, all these really haunting, disturbing things begin to happen. There are some middle of the night happenings that terrified me. There is a scene at the end that I don't want to give away the twist, but it was absolutely riveting and horrifying. And this is definitely a book that had me wanting to turn on all the lights, had me checking the dark corners of my bedroom. I do not currently have a bed that is lifted off the ground because we have a geriatric little dog and he cannot jump up and down off the bed without hurting himself. But if I did have a bed that was off the ground, I don't think I would have been able to sleep in it because of some of the things that was happening in this book. This was one of those books that when I got done reading it, I was like, I'm going to be thinking about this one for a long time. And then I was like, why aren't more people talking about this book? Why am I the only one who's like absolutely obsessed with Sarah Gailey and her writing? I hopped on Goodreads, which, you know, you can find all sorts of things on there. And this book actually got a pretty low rating of like 3.3, I think, 3.34 or something like that. And I didn't understand that because if I were giving this a star rating, it would get 5 stars. It would get 5 ghosts and 5 stars. So I dug in a little bit to the reviews to find out what I was missing, like why people weren't connecting with this book. And I think there's a couple things happening. One is it is a slow burn horror. And so if you're looking for a horror novel, this may be a little slower than maybe you like the horror books that you read to be. But if you like serial killer fiction, this is not really the book for you either. And if you like likable characters, definitely don't pick this one up because all of them are absolutely horrible. But I was really invested in every single one of their storylines, including the house's storyline. And I don't really need my characters to be likable. I just need them to be interesting and to have agency, even if the things they're deciding I would never decide for myself, even if I am absolutely horrified by their decision making, which in this case, absolutely horrified by the entire family's decision-making process. And I think one of the things that Sarah Gailey really does well is a genre mash. And I know the average reader does not like a genre mashup because they have expectations for how they want their books to be and feel and the things they want their characters to do. And when you have a genre mashup, sometimes those expectations do not get met. But I loved this one and also was deeply disturbed and terrified by it. And I was actually very happy that one of my favorite authors, they are quickly becoming one of my favorite authors, provided the scariest book of this vlog for me. I'm really happy about that. Weird to say that I'm happy that I was absolutely terrified while I was reading this book, but here we are. That's what this whole vlog was about, was scaring me. Here's another interesting thing. I listened to a lot of Just Like Home. I got the audiobook from the library and I was switching back and forth between the physical version and the audiobook version. And I know I had done a little bit of audiobook listening with This Cursed House and just didn't find it very scary. My theory was that audiobooks couldn't be as scary as reading the physical book, but no, y'all, that's not true. All you have to do is find the perfect audiobook narrator, and they picked the perfect voice for Just Like Home. I was getting chills up the back of my neck listening to her tell this story. The way she did the voices of the different characters just gave me chills. I have chills now just thinking about it. So I think that it is not necessarily an audiobook is less scary than a physical book. It is really all about which narrator they hire, and they hired a good one for Just Like Home. So that's it, my 5 ghost book for the haunted house book vlog. I actually have 3 more books on my pile that I was gonna try and read. I have Kill Creek, We Ate the Dark, and The September House, but I'm getting to a place where I need to end and edit this video and get it posted, and so I don't think I'm gonna have time to read these books, which is disappointing to me. I don't know if they would be as scary as Just Like Home. My gut is telling me no, they're not going to be as scary, and so I think we are fine ending this vlog with Just Like Home. I have started reading The September House by Carissa Orlando, and there are definitely a lot of ghosts in this book, and there's something very creepy lurking in the basement. I do not know what yet. I have not really gotten that far yet. I'm about 84 pages in. I don't think this is going to be a 5 ghost book. I'm not even sure it's going to be a 4 ghost book. It is giving vibes of the show Ghosts, where a couple moves into a house and there are these ghosts that they interact with and they're kind of chummy and friendly. Our main character has moved into her dream house. Her husband is missing, which is curious, but she interacts with the ghosts in this house in a way that may be scary for other people, but for her and for the reader, we are not scared of these ghosts. We are absolutely annoyed with them, but we're not scared. I'm not sure if this is going to twist into something more terrifying, but the vibe I'm getting from this is definitely more of a 2 to 3 ghost book. Have any of you read this book? What were your thoughts on it? Were you scared toward the end? Did it do a little twist in the middle where things got more and more terrifying? Let me know how many ghosts you would rate The September House. And then I think I'll just have to wait on Kill Creek and We Ate the Dark and maybe put these on a haunted house stack for next year. I had a really great time reading through all these haunted house books and seeing the different ways that different authors interpreted a haunted house and the ways that they tried to scare the reader. And what I love is that I think there's a haunted house book out there for everyone. I think you can have less scary haunted house books, you can have medium scary if you're feeling a little more adventurous, and then you can have the books that are just absolutely terrifying and just make you never want to buy an old house in the country ever for as long as you live. Also, you'll never want to go into a basement or up in an attic or into a rose garden. Thank you for joining me on this very spooky haunted house vlog. I hope that you had a good time and maybe you're inspired to read one of these haunted house books. I would love to know what your favorite haunted house book is. Let me know in the comments. And I think I'm definitely going to do something like this again next year because that was a whole heck of a lot of fun and I really love haunted house books, so I cannot wait to make a new stack for myself next October. I will be counting down the days until I can do another haunted house vlog for you all. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Have a very scary Halloween. I'll see you next time.